Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, it's the post-game pod from the Wolves win over the Chicago Bulls on Thursday, a 45-point fourth quarter keyed by Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, and Jaden McDaniels came to the party for the first time this season. We'll break down the whole game here next. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend. And it's a victory Friday. It's also a game day. The Wolves are back in action tonight on the second night of a back-to-back. But today we're talking all about the Wolves win over the Bulls on Thursday. It was a fun game to watch, a lot of offense, some pretty terrible defense by the Wolves early in this game, and also just a lot of really good shot making by both teams. So we'll break down what happened. I want to do some key takeaways here off the top. There's a couple like big ones that are important things that we've been waiting to see from the Wolves. So we'll get to those here in a minute. And as we always do on the postgame pod, we're going to close with individual studs and duds. So all that's upcoming here next. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And also a reminder about the Locked On Wolves daily newsletter. You can sign up on LockedOnDaily.com. It's a one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Wolves newsletter. All right. So the Timberwolves headed to Chicago 4-3 on the season, and this is a Bulls team that was 3-5, had just lost the night prior in Dallas. So second night of a back-to-back, traveled. No Zach LaVine out with an adductor strain. No Lonzo Ball in this game either. And, a game the Wolves, I think they were favored by 8 points on FanDuel. I said on the show, I guess it would have been yesterday's show, Thursday's show, I thought the Wolves would win. I didn't know that it would be 8 points. I thought it'd be a 6 to 8 point win. On the Minnesota basketball party on Wednesday, I believe both Sam and Jack predicted the Wolves would lose this game. And sure enough, the Wolves did struggle with a lot of what we were all concerned about related to the Bulls. Their shot making from the perimeter, their quickness, their activity level, the pace they play with. And because of that, the Wolves got off to a terrible start. Minnesota was down 6 at the end of the first, down 9 at halftime, trailed by as many as 13 points in this game, and was still down by 5 headed to the fourth quarter, and then just completely took the game over in the fourth. I want to kind of go like overall what the flow of this game was, because the Wolves essentially, the way they played in the first quarter was very different from how they ended this game. So I think I don't always just like go straight game flow, but like the way this game started, it was just a lot of shot making. And I actually don't think the Wolves defense was horrendous in the first quarter of this game. They gave up a couple open shots, but the Bulls hit every single open shot they got and some contested shots. Chicago was 6 of their first 7 from outside the arc. And the Wolves were, I think, 4 of 4 or 5 of 5, their first 5 shots from outside the arc. This was just, both teams were just absolutely flame-throwing. And I talked about on Thursday's show that the Wolves and Bulls were both top 5 in attempt rate and 3-point attempt rate and percentage coming into the game. I think maybe one of the teams might have been 6. Top 6, we'll call it, in both attempt rate from outside the arc and percentage coming into this game. And that's how this game started. I actually thought the Wolves had pretty good energy. They should have, but sometimes with 2 days off instead of 1, they can come out a bit slow in the first quarter. And I actually thought it was okay. I thought the Bulls just made a lot of tough shots. Now, that wasn't the case for much of the second and third quarter, when the Wolves technically played better in that, like, they were -6 in the first quarter. They were only a -3 the second, a +4 in the third. But I actually thought the defense was worse in the middle of the game for Minnesota. At some point, it just was like, it was like a pregame layup line with the Bulls going to the rim. When Rudy was off the floor, Chicago scored at the rim at will. I thought Rudy was pretty good overall in this game. But he was a little bit slow in some rotations, and he wasn't the only one. Again, when he was off the floor, the Wolves defense was much worse. And Chicago scored at will. I mean, they had 3 consecutive 30-plus point quarters in this game and still led by 5 going to the fourth quarter. So, giving up 119 points to the Bulls and giving up 65 points in the first half to the Bulls, on pace to give up 130 for the game, that is not anywhere near what we saw last season from what was the league's number 1 defense with a bullet, right? Like, I say this all the time on the show. The defense was the second best defense statistically in terms of gap between first and second defense in the league in the last 30 years. And the defense has been the problem so far this season through 8 games, and it was again in this one. The offense was actually pretty good the entire night for Minnesota. They got to the line. The shot distribution was good. They had a bunch of assists. They didn't turn it over too much. It was the defense was the culprit. And again, we have to credit how good Chicago was at shooting the basketball, but there were too many missed rotations, too many. Rudy got sucked into the paint and allowed Vucevic to hit his first 3 3-point attempts, which were all wide open on the perimeter. And I believe Rudy was on the floor for all of them. It was just even though they were playing with energy and good pace offensively, they were just, I would just say it's more missed assignments, lackadaisicalness, if you will, defensively for Minnesota in this game. And those were the biggest problems early on. And it's what led to what ultimately became a 13-point hole. Late first, early second quarter, I actually thought the Wolves bench, which I've spent a lot of time this week talking about how great it's been, they struggled. Nas for this game only had 4 points, 2 rebounds in 18 minutes, was not playing at all in crunch time. It was Rudy and Julius Randle on the floor in crunch time. DiVincenzo played pretty well, but he was 4 of 13 shooting and really struggled in the first half overall. It took him a minute to get hot. Nickeil had a limited impact as well. 5 points on 5 shots for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. This ended up being Ant, Rudy, and Jaden, and also Julius Randle, really. Actually, the starters, period. It's funny. Like I said a second ago, I spent like a show and a half this week talking about how great the Wolves bench was. I think I talked about it Wednesday and Thursday, and how all their best 5-man units involve most of the bench, and the starting group was a net negative, clearly by quite a wide margin heading into play against the Bulls. Well, the starters outplayed the bench by quite a bit in this game. Now, the Wolves closed with the starters minus Conley plus DiVincenzo. We saw that maybe in one other game this year, in one of the games that Conley really struggled. Conley was good in this game. He had 14 and 11, knocked down 3 threes, looked comfortable. But DiVincenzo was also playing really well. The Wolves were getting buckets by just calling plays to get him open, to get him catch and shoot threes off of staggered screens and floppy actions. Just get the ball in DiVincenzo's hands, catch and shoot situations as a movement shooter. And it worked. So it was starters plus DiVincenzo that played really well. Reid and Alexander-Walker were quiet. Josh Minott did get 3 rotation minutes in the first half, and I don't think he didn't really have any impact. In fact, he didn't log a single stat. He had a turnover and a rebound, and those both came in garbage time. But he showed a little bit of good activity defensively, and for whatever it's worth, he got those 3 minutes that the 9th spot gets each night, or at least in 7 of the 8 games, there's been a 9th rotation guy for the Wolves. Notable that the starters significantly outplayed the bench in this game. I want to get into a couple other things. I want to spend some time on all the guys I just mentioned that played extremely well. I want to talk about the fourth quarter and kind of what happened, and spend some time on the Wolves offense and Rudy Gobert's role in this game, and then we'll get into studs and duds. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at PrizePicks. They're our title sponsors of today's show. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions with a B of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to do all this. Every sport you can check out on PrizePicks. Again, 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. They're the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, which is huge. That means your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt in the first half in either basketball or football. If they don't return, PrizePicks will keep your lineup live. It's the best place to get real money sports action. Again, over 10 million users. You can sign up today. Plus, maybe other than the injury insurance thing, the injury insurance policy, like the other great thing is that the withdrawals are fast, they're safe, they're secure. When your picks hit, you get your money in as quick as 15 minutes, and they now offer Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. Sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Again, you can download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app, code LOCKEDONNBA. $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. The Timberwolves were 8-point favorites against the Bulls. They easily covered that, winning by 16. Friday night, the Timberwolves play host to who do they play Friday night? Portland. And for whatever reason, I'm looking right now, I don't see the game on FanDuel for Friday night for Minnesota. Don't know if it's because the Wolves played. Actually, Portland did too. I think both teams are on a back-to-back, which is kind of weird. But anyway, there's no line currently on FanDuel, so go check that out. Not really sure why. So now I'm curious if there's like an injury that I don't know about. But anyway, that's Friday night. Check it out on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. So the Timberwolves in the fourth quarter, they scored 45 points, and the Bulls broadcast, which was on NBA TV, said that it was the most points that any team in the NBA has scored this season in a single quarter. And like 41 of it, I think, was non-garbage time. Like this was legit. The Wolves opened the quarter. They called a play immediately for Donte DiVincenzo to get a bucket. Teams traded buckets for a little while. DiVincenzo hits another three. Then Gobert gets a three-point play, which was one of, I think, two in the fourth quarter that he had because he had the big dunk as well. Julius Randle gets a couple of free throws. Alexander Walker makes a shot. Julius Randle scores again. Ant hits a three. Ant hits another three, which puts the Wolves up 7 with 6 minutes to play and forces a Bulls timeout. And then they basically trade buckets for a little while. Rudy gets his three-point play dunking over Kobe White with 4.5 minutes left. Ant makes another tough layup. They're up 10 points. And then after the Bulls pulled to within 8 on a too easy bucket, which was one of many of those in this game by Ayo Dosunmu, with just under 4 minutes to play, it's now an 8-point game. Jaden McDaniels hits a 3-point jumper from the corner on a really nice pass from Rudy. I believe it was like Randle dumped it off to Rudy, who was kind of falling out of bounds. Rudy did a great job turning and finding Jaden in the left corner, and he knocked down the three. Now's as good a time as any to talk about Jaden McDaniels. Jaden was great in this game. He was solid defensively. He was 3 for 3 outside the arc. He knocked down a couple threes early, and he hit that 3 late. And it was timely. And the Wolves are just a different team. And I know Chris Finch spent a lot of time the last couple of years in post-game conferences talking about how, Jaden's a good bellwether for the Wolves offense. I always thought that was a weird way to say it because more often than not, Jaden doesn't have a great offensive game. So I don't know that I'd call him a bellwether or an indicator, but I would say if Jaden McDaniels is playing well offensively, the Wolves aren't going to lose. They just aren't because they don't ask him to do too much. But if he does have to do a lot, it's because other teams are locking down on Ant, on Julius Randle, perhaps on Rudy, on Nas, last year on Cat. And that means there's opportunities for Jaden. And most of the time, Jaden's not going to overextend himself and try and create something out of nothing. He's just got to knock down open jumpers. He's got to pump fake guys and get to the rim and score. He's got to finish your contact. He's got to make the right reads and the right passes, not turn the ball over. And he did all of the above. Stay out of foul trouble. He did that in this game. Only one foul, 19 points on 6 of 7 shooting, a perfect 3 of 3 outside the arc. Got fouled a couple of times, was a perfect 4 of 4 at the line. 19 points on 7 shots is otherworldly efficiency. I mean, that's nearly 3 points a shot attempt, which is crazy. Just an awesome game from Jaden. Only 2 boards, 1 block. But again, just 1 foul, 1 personal foul, 1 turnover for Jaden. An outstanding game from him. And I might as well talk about Rudy a little bit now, too. I don't want to steal too much from studs and duds. But those 2 guys in supporting roles were so good in this game. Rudy ended up scoring 21 on 9 of 11 shooting, but he had the poster over Cody White, and he had a couple of other makes where he had to show a bit of dexterity. He had one that was like, he gets the ball on the run. I think this was like in transition, and somebody dumped the ball off to him as he was running down the court, and he did the thing where you feel like he's just going to airball a layup, but he flipped it up and in and made the bucket on the move. And like, it was one of those games for Rudy where he looked healthy. Not that he normally doesn't look healthy, but sometimes he's a little bit gimpier than others. And we knew he had the bad ankle. I think he was questionable. It was Monday night. He was questionable and played. And he just looked comfortable, healthy, rested, all of the above in this game. 21 and 9 for Rudy, 3 assists, just the 1 block. I thought he got a piece of another one late that didn't get credited with the block for it, but had a presence in the paint, led the Wolves in plus minus with a plus 23 pretty easily. And Vucevic scored a couple buckets on him. And he had 25 points, but Rudy scored a lot of buckets on Nikola Vucevic, and Rudy doesn't normally score 20 plus in a game. So this was a solid Rudy Gobert performance for sure. And I just want to like underscore what I said about McDaniels a minute ago about how when he plays well, the Wolves pretty much don't lose when he plays well offensively. And that's mostly true of Rudy too. The role players all did their part. So we're going to spend some time on Randle and Anthony Edwards here because they led the way offensively, but the Wolves scored 135 points and shot 54% in this game, which means there were other guys that came to play offensively. And it wasn't just up to the high volume scorers to do that. In fact, let's do that now. Like if you're box score watching in this game, first of all, there aren't that many rebounds because both teams shot over 53% from the field, which is nuts. But the Wolves were a +7 on the glass. They tied in offensive rebounds, which is important for them to at least hold their own there. They turned it over 1 less time than the Bulls. They got to the line twice more and were a perfect 17 of 17 from the free throw line, which is such a sight for sore eyes. The Bulls were just 10 of 15 at the free throw line. So it was massive to get that sort of an advantage. 16 of 38 from outside the arc. They outshot the Bulls. They were 15 of 36 from outside the arc. So both teams were in the neighborhood of 42% from deep. Bulls shot 43.4% from the field. Wolves 54.3% from the field. And this was just a complete offensive bonanza. But the Wolves starting lineup and the ball movement and the execution, like pretty much for 48 minutes, the offensive execution was extremely high level. And yes, the Bulls had some defensive lapses. They're not a great defensive team. In fact, I think they're the worst paint defending team in the league. I think they've given up the most paint points, or maybe are averaging the most paint points allowed per game of any team in the league. The Wolves had 66 paint points in this game. They also gave up 60 to the Bulls. But we still have to give credit where credit is due. The Wolves coaching staff had some really good ATO plays. I mean, I mentioned the DiVincenzo play to start the fourth quarter, but they had a couple of play calls for him. They had some play calls to get Ant in space. And then the Wolves' execution and passing was very good. Very few bad turnovers, like Julius Randle dribbled into a crowd a couple of times. Besides that, I actually thought the ball movement and decision-making by the Wolves' offense was extremely solid in this game. All right. Let's close with individual studs and duds. I want to talk about Randle. I want to talk about Ant. And we'll talk, I guess those are the two big ones, but a bit more here on how the Wolves were able to pull away in the fourth quarter. That's how we'll close out the show today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our new friends over at Skims. When you're looking for underwear, what's the biggest thing you're looking for? Obviously, it's comfort and fit. You know, I think that goes along with it. If it's going to be comfortable, it's going to fit you. And I don't know, I, for a long time, like just wore regular boxers, transitioned into boxer briefs sometimes around college, and it still wasn't all that comfortable. Sometimes they're just like hotter and they ride up or whatever. But I don't know, adults wear adults wear boxer briefs, right? That was kind of my thought process. And I finally found some boxer briefs that are really comfortable in recent years. And that is, of course, our friends at Skims. The stretch 5-inch boxer briefs are fantastic. They allow, they actually kind of feel a little bit like you're wearing almost like workout underwear, the synthetic feel, but it doesn't have the synthetic feel to it. It's just that type of a fit. When you try the Skims stretch boxer briefs, they definitely make you feel like you're finding the missing link in your daily underwear selection, and way better than regular boxers were back in the day. Extremely, extremely comfortable, and they don't ride up. It's just kind of that classic boxer brief feel, but even more comfortable and sleek. Shop Skims men's at skims.com and let them know that we sent you if you want to check out the stretch boxer briefs. They also have cotton boxer briefs. They have the 3-inch, they have the 5-inch, whatever size inseam you want. It's great. Again, Skims men's at skims.com and let them know that we sent you here at Locked On Wolves. After you place your order, just select podcast in the survey and select our show, Locked On Wolves, in the drop-down menu that follows. If you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, also available at skims.com. Again, place your order, select podcast in the survey, select Locked On Wolves in the drop-down, and let them know that we sent you. All right, individual studs and duds from this one. I talked a lot about Rudy and Jaden. Let's talk about Ant. Anthony Edwards had 33 points on 23 shots in this game. There's, of course, the whole Anthony Edwards playing in Chicago, the house that Jordan built. We know that. For whatever that's worth, I guarantee you that there's some sort of, I'm sure it's not just for Ant, but anybody playing in Chicago means a lot. Ant was good early. He made 1 3 in the first quarter. Missed a couple of layups. In fact, that was one of the issues early in this game. I didn't mention that off the top, but the Wolves missed a bunch of layups in the first quarter. And again, the ball movement was really good offensively. The shot selection was good. Nas missed a layup. Rudy missed maybe 2 layups. Ant missed, I think, 1 early. Ant missed a couple of layups. It was at least 4, if not 5 missed layups in the first quarter by the Wolves. And Ant was a culprit on a couple of them. But he also hit a tough mid-range shot. He had a nice move where he got to about 8 feet into the thing where he hangs in the air, almost hits the floor, but releases the kind of floater push shot that went in, and he made 1 3. He had another 3 go in and out. A decent offensive start for Ant, and then he leaves, and in the early second quarter when Ant's on the bench, the Bulls go on, their big run to push. I think that's when they got up double digits. And then in the second half, Ant was awesome. Very, very smart decision-making. He ended up with only 2 free throw attempts in this game. He did have 1 turnover when he went into the paint and got the ball stripped away from him, and that could have been a foul too. I was a little surprised when it was all said and done. He only had 2 free throw attempts. It felt to me like he was around the rim more often. And he did, high volume of threes again. He'd been averaging over 11 3-pointers per game. He only, air quotes around only, shot 9 threes in this game, but he made 5 of them. And he was 8 of 14 on 2s, which is not bad. Like, we'll take 8 of 14 on 2s and 5 of 9 on 3s. You love him to get more than 2 free throw attempts, but I thought he was appropriately aggressive in this game. And more often than not, through 8 games, Ant has pulled the right levers offensively. He's made the right decisions, pass, shoot, drive, pull up, whatever, push in transition, kick the ball back out. By and large, the decision-making's been there. I know that coming into play on Thursday, Ant had more turnovers than assists. That wasn't a problem in this game, and I don't think it will be long-term, at least not a regular problem. He had 6 assists, 2 turnovers in this game. He also had 8 rebounds. So this was an 8-rebound game, a 6-assist game, and just 2 turnovers for Ant. 33 points on 23 shots, and hit a couple of daggers late. He hit consecutive 3-pointers, including the one that put them up, what was it, like 11 or something like that with 6 to play, that forced the Billy Donovan timeout. And then he hit a couple tough shots like late, hit a layup in the lane that pretty much shut the game down. Just a really nice Ant performance. And he looked like Rudy. Like, he looked spry. He looked rested. He looked healthy. Getting in a stance, picking up 3/4 court. I'm sure the 2 days off helps a ton, and this is the first game of now 3 and 4 days once again. So they play again Friday night at home. They get Saturday off, and then they play Sunday at home. And it's a lot, right? And we'll see how his legs and his knees and everything feel here in a couple of days. But He did all of the above tonight on Thursday night. He defended, he scored at all three levels. He was active, he was engaged, which again, he usually is, but sometimes, he's a little less so. And that wasn't an issue in this one. Talked about Rudy. He's obviously a stud too. 21 points on 11 shots, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and a block, only 2 turnovers, a perfect 3 of 3 at the free throw line, which is one of the few Wolves that's been consistently good at the line this year. My third stud, it could easily be Jaden. I already talked about Jaden and gave him some flowers. Let's go Julius Randle. 22 points on 8 of 15, 10 rebounds. Actually, they could both be studs. Why not? It's the first real blowout win. The Charlotte one was kind of a blowout win, but first blowout road game of the year. We'll go 4 studs for this one. Julius had 22 on 15 shots, much better. 1 of 4 on threes, 5 of 5 at the line, 10 rebounds, 3 assists. He did have 4 turnovers. I mentioned earlier he had a couple of kind of unforced errors where he just dribbled into a crowd early on. But besides that, Randle played really well. He called his number a couple of times, dribbled into some tough spots, was involved in some isolation opportunities, but, more often than not was drawing a foul or, knocking down a tough shot. That's just kind of what Julius Randle does. It never really, maybe one time did it feel kind of clunky, but otherwise this was kind of like all season where, 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, he's making the right decision with the ball in his hands. And usually it ends up with a good shot attempt or a foul call. He led the team in rebounding in this game. 3 assists is good. Like, he pushed the ball in transition, played with pace, and I thought he was okay defensively. I mean, he's part of the problem. They gave up 119 points, but in this game, like, other than the fourth quarter where they still ended up giving up 24 points. But, he wasn't it wasn't as glaring. His defense wasn't as glaring in this game, more because his teammates weren't great either. So those are the studs. I should also mention Mike Conley had a double-double, 14 points, 11 assists, and 0 turnovers. This was much more like the Mike Conley we saw for much of last season, the last season and a half in a Timberwolves uniform. So great performance from Conley. I mentioned Josh Minus 3 rotation minutes off the bench. Nas was quiet. I don't have any duds for this game. Like, Nas wasn't great, but it wasn't a dud-worthy performance. He had 4 points, 2 rebounds, 2 of 7 shooting, missed all 3 of his 3-point attempts, but, he was fine. I didn't really have a problem with it. If I had to pick a dud, I guess it would be Nas, but, it wasn't an actively bad performance. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was just quiet, 5 points on 5 shots, 1 of 3 on threes, 1 rebound, 1 steal. I thought he was good defensively. He was maybe the Wolves' best defensive player in this game. Jaden was good too. DiVincenzo, 13 points on 13 shots. So not the efficiency we're looking for, but he chipped in 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block in this game. When the Wolves were struggling defensively early, he shot the gap and had a nice steal in transition. He had a couple of nice dump-offs to Rudy again. I don't know that he threw him a lob, but he found him. At least 2 of his 4 assists, if not more, were to Rudy. So as he continues to kind of run that second unit, he's looked really, really comfortable. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the Wolves ran a bunch of plays for him to get some shots off movement, and that worked out really well in this game. But DiVincenzo was solid. Garbage time, Garza didn't really do much. Dozier barely, and Dillingham didn't do much. Shannon scored a couple of buckets, had a nice drive and layup, and then had a steal in transition and a dunk. Playing back in Chicago, obviously played for the University of Illinois the last few years. So it was good to see him get his first NBA bucket and see him do it in Illinois and get a couple of buckets there. So that was a fun kind of garbage time end of the game. All right, next up, the Wolves play Friday night. They play the Portland Trailblazers, which, weirdly enough, Portland also played on Thursday. They lost by 7 to San Antonio. And Portland's been a little better than people expected. 3 of the Wolves' next 4 games are against the Blazers. It's going to be tough to beat any team 3 times over the span of a week. But I think they've got a shot at beating Portland 3 times. If nothing else, they've got to win at least 2 of them. And there's one more game mixed in there as well. But they are in Minnesota, 8 p.m. tip Friday night at Target Center. The Blazers have lost 3 out of 4. They lost to Oklahoma City, lost at Phoenix, beat New Orleans, the battered and bruised New Orleans team, by 18, and then lost by 13 to the Spurs on Thursday night. So both teams on a back-to-back, both have to travel into Minneapolis. And so we'll see how that goes. Again, I didn't see a line at FanDuel as of yet, but the Wolves should be favored in that one by, I don't know, 10, 11, something like that, probably maybe 9. They have the Heat at home at Target Center on Sunday, which will be a bit tougher, of course, although Miami's not exactly, gangbusters. And then consecutive games, back-to-back nights against Portland next Tuesday, Wednesday, both 9 p.m. Central tips. And then they go to Sacramento next Friday night for the second time this year already, a 9 p.m. tip. So 3 9 p.m. tips next week. Rest up this weekend to be ready for some late games next week. All right. That's all we got for you today here on the show. Make sure to tune into the live postcast tomorrow night. It was a good one on Thursday with Jack and Luke. They'll be back at it again on Friday after Wolves Blazers. Jack will be at the game. We'll be covering it for us on the Locked On Wolves postcast over on Locked On Sports Minnesota. I'll be back on Monday. We'll talk about on Monday's show. We'll pretty much it'll be the postgame pod from Sunday's Miami show. So make sure to tune into the postcast after Wolves Blazers tomorrow night, because we won't cover that here on Locked On Wolves. But again, I'll be back Monday. We'll talk Wolves Miami. We'll get you ready for 2 more against Portland, and we'll go from there. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. A reminder about the Locked On Wolves daily newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox every day. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. Start your day with the all-new free Locked On Wolves newsletter. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.